Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with Grizzly Mack. The most logical place to begin that in is as a fan, when were you first introduced to wrestling?
Okay, so I was first introduced to wrestling. It would have been grade 3. I just switched schools, and I was sitting on the bus, and my friend was telling me all about wrestling. He was telling me what was happening, and it sounded really interesting. And looking back on it, it's kind of laughable what dropped me in, because a lot of people hated this. It's the Vince illegitimate son angle. It's him pitching his... who he thinks it is. He was pitching like Finley. I think Finley's the one that I always remember. He's like, oh, they're both Irish. It's got to be Finley or something. And I'm like, looking back, it's like, kids are stupid. They're like the same. The age wouldn't work out. But yeah, like the Vince illegitimate son angle, right there. It was kind of like right before Hornswoggle got revealed. I like the first episode of SmackDown I watched was Hornswoggle giving away the title belt, giving away the Cruiserweight Championship. And then I saw Matt Hardy, and I was immediately hooked.
Okay, so it was a friend of yours that talked it up to you and made you want to pursue it, and then you saw Matt Hardy. You saw it. Was there any other elements of it that really appealed to you? Whether it was the presentation, the character work, the in-ring performances, like what was it about it that when you saw it made you go, "Oh wow, I want to keep tuning in"?
I don't know. I think it was just so different from anything else, like having watched, like really we watched at the time, like my parents, I watched a lot of sports still, but really I only watched hockey. I couldn't get into football yet. It was too slow. And there was always something happening. And because I think also it came on later at night, so it felt like I'm not really supposed to be watching this because I'm younger. So a little bit of that, like, it's so cool to get to watch this.
Was there any sort of like cautions about watching it, or was it something that was completely encouraged?
So nothing. Like I remember asking my mom if I was allowed to watch it because it came on at like 8:00, which I think I was supposed to be in bed like an hour after that. And I said, I'll only watch the first hour. I know it's 2 hours. And then nothing happens. I watched the entire 2 hours. Like I'm completely hooked the entire time. I don't think, and it's just immediate kickstarted. There was never really any big like issues about it. The only time I ever remember my parents seeing anything wrestling related and being like, what are you watching? They were doing like the replay of like the Raw 100 whatever it was, one of the recap things
Clip
years
shows?
later. Yeah. And it was the Edge and Lita sex scene. And it was like, I turned it off and then I kept trying to come back, and it was just so long that it was like, I'm like, this is taking forever. It's like this. And then I got in shit for watching that at one point, because they're like, what are you watching?
So growing through your fandom at this point, who were some of the performers, Matt Hardy perhaps, but other ones that like grew to be your favorites?
At the time, as a kid, like my favorites were like Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy when he moved over to SmackDown, because I didn't really watch Raw. We didn't get it on TV. So it was very much blue brand only for that. Batista, Rey Mysterio, and Undertaker. And then very much despised Edge with a burning passion. Same with MVP. Could not stand watching either of those two. And then also really being into like Shannon Moore and Jimmy Wang Yang.
You really start to appreciate as you get older and as you learn more about the industry that the fact that you hated those guys just meant that they were doing such a good job. Right?
So good. So good. Love those two. Love watching those two now. But yeah, as a kid, hated them.
I love to ask the question, as you're going through your fandom, did you get an opportunity at any point to experience a live event, to get to feel the crowd, to get to go to a show of whether it was, WWE, traveling house show, independent, like, did you get to actually experience it live?
So I didn't get to go see a WWE show live until like I was late teens. I want to say I might have even already like going into university that September. It was the first time I got to see WWE. It was some house show. But I do remember getting to see fair shows. A couple fair shows. I would go down to Cambridge to visit my grandmother, and she volunteered at a fair, and I would help her out. And there was wrestling there. So every time the wrestling started, I would go watch the wrestling. It was, at the time, it was PWA during their Cambridge show. But I can't, other than remembering like that I watched wrestling, I have very little memory of the actual, like, what happened.
Did you right from the start have this feeling in the back of your mind that this was something that you wanted to do, or did that evolve over time?
When we first, as kids, like the group, we had like a small group of like 4 of us who all watched it a lot together. We all played with the action figures, and we were at the time in like grade 3 and grade 4. We're like, yeah, let's be wrestlers one day. And then over time, we all kind of stopped watching for a bit. Like, I want to say I stopped watching not long after Jeff Hardy left the WWE, after the Punk feud for a bit. And then I came back, really didn't come back until after WrestleMania 30.
Okay.
So then I was hooked. Back at that point, I was like, it's something I was interested in. Good idea. Like, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", so like I knew I had a bit of an advantage in it from the start. But at one point, I actually wanted to be a ref, and I went and had just been following independent wrestlers, and there was a seminar somebody had put on. It was it was the Impact referees were doing a seminar in Toronto, leading up to either, I think it was Slammiversary was in Toronto or Bound for Glory or something like that. And somebody, I can't remember which ref, supposed to, like, anybody who wants to even be a ref, you should be at this. So I went. Very much probably should not have been there, but I was there. Did like a ref seminar, and then I actually didn't get to do anything out of that because I moved back to Thunder Bay because I went there for school. Didn't get the chance to really capitalize on that at all, so I left. And then when I dropped out of university, I moved back home, and within a week and a half of moving back home, Josh Alexander opened his school up in my hometown.
And that was for like a wrestler rather than a referee at that point?
For a wrestler, yeah. I had some interest in being a wrestler at the time. Like, it was something I had stated, like, I want to do it, but I really, like, I was looking in Thunder Bay, and there's nothing really up there to do anything with. And at the time, I was planning to be up there for 6 years. So I was like, it became like a big back burner thing. It just wasn't an option living up there. And then when I moved back home, just the opportunity, and I saw the post for him posting about it, and within, I think, half an hour, I had already emailed him to try and get this thing rolling.
See, my curiosity wasn't more so in going into that school there. It was more just the switch from ref to performer at that point. Because you go to a seminar for refereeing, you go to school. Was there anything that caused you to change that mindset of, no, I don't want to go to refereeing, I want to go to wrestling? Or was it just because this is the opportunity that's in front of me? Josh Alexander's doing a school for wrestlers. Let's try something that's involved in it.
I think the idea with the reffing originally was like always been very like on that end of sport, others into sports. Like, I didn't end up reffing, but I did a lot of timekeeping, been interested in coaching stuff. So that idea, but knowing like from reading wrestling books that like a lot of wrestlers started out at some, even if it was only a couple matches, they reffed first. So I went out and I was like, well, this is the opportunity because it was a single day seminar. I can get my foot in the door. Maybe then I can find a way to get into the schools, because the only school at the time I knew of was Battle Arts. I just didn't find anything else that was open. And at the time, it was a little bit too far to be driving constantly, which I kind of chuckle at now because it's like a 40-minute drive. And there's been points where I've driven 3 hours on a night just to go to training.
So you're walking into the training school now with Josh Alexander. How are you feeling? How is your reaction to that first day? Are you overwhelmed? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Like, what were your feelings about actually putting this plan into motion?
I was definitely like super excited, but super nervous because I was showing up. Like, the reason it was so like, it's Josh, in my opinion, he's one of the best wrestlers on the planet. So the fact that like when he announced it, I was in shock, and then getting to go there and be like, okay, I'm actually trying this. And I was looking at like, we had a Facebook group where you're slowly adding people, but there was nothing there. So I was like, just kind of looking at some of the others, and like one of the guys was like a Canadian powerlifter. I was like, oh crap, am I already way out of my depth here? So I was definitely a little nervous going in there on the first day.
Did you have fairly athletic background kind of give you a baseline for that? Or was it mostly just like the timekeeping and the refereeing and stuff like that? Or were you actually active in sport?
I played hockey most of my life growing up. And then I played basketball in high school, and then just like wanted to play football as well. But I actually injured my knee like 2 summers, or like that last week of summer going into high school twice. So I just didn't end up playing. But I'd played quite a bit, like sports pretty consistently, and I played some lacrosse as well. So I had a bit of a sports background, but not very much like more. I didn't really have any combat sports experience.
Not a power lifter.
No.
So you're in training now. How are you finding it? Are you finding any particular elements that are particularly challenging? Are you finding anything that comes really naturally for you? Like, how is that progression going for you?
I think it was definitely challenging because Josh definitely pushed us from day one. It was a very intense push. It's something I really enjoyed though, because it was like, we're getting there, we're working hard, you're getting something out of this. There's a few things I'd struggled with. I tended to pick up things a little bit slower for the first while. Like, I remember rolls, they weren't quite right. Like, I was always doing rolls, you're supposed to go perfectly straight, yada yada. I was always tended to roll onto my right shoulder, and eventually just the repeated, I had bummed up my shoulder a little bit. So then I was overcompensating now to try and adjust that, and it started to fix it. And then I got a little lucky one day. I show up to training, and Josh goes, "Nobody else is coming tonight." So we sat down, we fixed the ring because there's been a couple soft spots, and then we spent like an hour straight just like cleaning up a couple like really fine details, and that was fantastic.
So when you get those kind of trouble spots, parts that you're having difficulty with, parts that you're having struggles with, maybe injuries or just kind of wear and tear on the body, where do you find the motivation to keep going? Do you have a support system? Do you have a sounding board? Do you have colleagues that you can rely on? Like, how do you find the motivation when it's a little bit lacking?
At the time, because like it was still relatively early into being at Josh's, like you'd chat with the people who were there, but we weren't like friends or anything. So really the support system was just like, I had like a couple friends who kind of liked wrestling, but it was more of just like a really self-driving, like, I really want to do this. I have this opportunity. I'm not going to waste this right now. So I want to push through and keep going. But there was a few days when, like, if we had a really hard workout where the next day I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm so sore everywhere. This sucks. And then, but by the time the next class, a day and a half later, started up, I was ready to go. I want to go. Let's go. We're doing this.
So now you're training, you're doing your thing, you're getting a little bit better. Take us through how the lead up is to your first match. Like, how does it come to be? How are your feelings when you actually get the realization that you're going to be performing? Like, what's all of the steps leading up to that first match?
So it gets a little long here. So I was at Josh's from, I want to say it was April of 2019 until March of 2020. So we all know COVID started right around that time. Josh was actually closing his school. The Thursday was the last class. That next day, the Friday, is when everything shut down.
Wow. Okay.
So I was not greenlit yet. So the school was closing. I wasn't greenlit, but I had plans. The rough idea was I was going to start going to HPW in Hamilton, go train with Rip to finish training, get my green light so I could get going. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit. So I was sidelined for like a year and a half, I want to say it was, until we got something. Then during the pandemic, Shane Saber reached out to me and goes, "Hey, we're trying to get a little like training area ready. Are you interested in helping out?" I got really lucky again. We called it the barn, opened up. It's basically the same distance from my house Josh's was. So I got really lucky, back to back, didn't have to drive. So that's when I was really started to like get a chance to talk to like Shane Saber, Lexi Nicole, Gabriel Fuerza, Von Vertigo, John Greed, Holden Albright.
Some wonderful names on the Ontario scene there.
Yeah, some absolute wonderful guys. And then also, it was the first time I met Kyle Boone and Shiloh. So training there, but Shane Saber would run like Monday evening, like weeknight classes kind of thing. And I was working, so I couldn't go to those, but I would spend basically my entire weekend at the ring there. I would show up at 8 a.m. for like the first person to run a class, and I would leave at like 8 p.m. I would be there all day, busting my ass, trying to get going. Eventually, Holden Albright reaches out to me and he lets me know, hey, I go in at like lunchtime 4 days a week. Do you want to come and I'll train? We can train together during that. So I started doing that. So I'd go train with him for a few hours a week. Eventually Van Landen joined us as well. So the three of us were all kind of training together there. And then eventually we had to close the barn. A bunch of them moved. I still wasn't greenlit, but wasn't too worried because I was getting lots of reps in. And then Albright started bouncing around. He was doing like a Saturday drop-in class at Battle Arts as well as leading classes at Crossbody. So I would try and get out to his Saturday classes while they were happening, but like I think I missed the first half of them just for like I had to work or I had other stuff. And then So I started getting out to those, and then I was driving to Cambridge to Crossbody to go train with him. And then I was getting ready, what would it have been? In the summer of 2022, getting ready to be greenlit. I was almost there, and I tore my rotator cuff in 3 places.
No.
So on me, took a move wrong it's on me. So I was out for, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, letting that heal up, which then kind of sidelined stuff a bit. Roughly around that time is when Albright's dad passed away, but Pretty Ricky Wilde put on a benefit show for his dad. And at one point I was actually supposed to debut then. It's going to be just a quick little battle royal spot, whatever. I got COVID. I couldn't go.
Oh,
so
man.
That was a bummer as well. But then knowing that Holden Albright already had an actual match plan, was I was going to go, he was doing a show in late January 2023, and that was going to be my debut match. He had pitched one name that didn't end up working out, and then he settled on Forza. So I knew now my first match was going to be against Gabriel Forza. That was super exciting. Definitely a little anxiety inducing, but that was super cool. And I actually, on the Friday night, right before I was supposed to debut, because I debuted on Sunday, I go to PWO because I was just helping out. Spent a lot of time helping set up a lot of rings, being there, busting my ass. And I get there and they go, so you're greenlit as of Sunday, right? Cool. And they had me debut a character where I just ran in and attacked 3 guys on the Friday, so that for their next show, I was already debuted and ready to go, because I wasn't supposed to originally happen. It was going to be pushed to the next month, but Kyle Boone and Shiloh had COVID, or thought they had COVID, so they couldn't make the show. So we had to play around with what the game plan was.
Man, that's so you didn't actually have a match at the PWO, but they were like, we're going to get you in the ring, you can do a couple moves, and then Sunday you can have your actual match. Wow, there's a lot of things that happened there.
Yeah, at PWO, I want to say it was John Greed, Shane Saber, and it was a trios match. John Greed, Shane Saber, and Scumbag Yates took on Airstrike XL, Mike Forte, Tyler Arrow, and PD Skills. And after the match, I while they were celebrating, rushed the ring, double choke slammed Airstrike, and then attacked PD Skills as well to join their new faction at the time.
Let's fast forward to the Sunday then. You are now getting your opportunity to have your first official match. It's against Gabriel Forza, which, I mean, that's a heck of a name in Ontario independent wrestling and beyond.
Absolutely.
How did that go? How did you feel about that one, going into it, during it, after?
So on the way there, I was meeting up with Van Lannen. We were going to carpool over, and the snow was really bad. There was a blizzard the day of the show. So we were driving a little slow. I was a little late. I think I was 5-10 minutes late, just because of how bad the snow was. Because he got held up so long, trying to meet up with me. We're waiting. We were a little late. So then Albright likes to joke, you show up late for your first match. And I was so nervous at that point. Shit, things already aren't going great today because of that. But definitely nervous. Went over the match, put the match together, and then spent a lot of time going over it, because it was the first time I'd had an actual match in front of anybody. It's the first time I was going to come out to make an entrance on a show, anything like that. So I was definitely nervous. Right before I went through the curtain, as soon as that, just kind of the nervousness goes away. It's it's time to go. Let's go. We did the match, came to the back. I was ecstatic. I was happy with it at the time. Obviously, looking back, I'm there's so much things I would have loved to have done better in the match. But you live and you learn.
So I do want to ask you, just fast forwarding a little bit to the formation of the tag team Commotion.
Yes.
In your words, how did that come to be?
So I had met Travis he came to Josh's. He actually had a buddy who was training there at the time who had talked about him, and we were chatting. We met, chatting. And then at shows, we were just kind of getting along when I saw him at shows. And then we had kind of played around with the idea of me being his bodyguard at different promotions before I got greenlit, stuff like that. Nothing ever really came out of it. But then we decided hey, we should try and do a tag team, because he at the time he just kind of finished a tag team thing with Andrew Love. And he was kind of looking, I really like tag team wrestling. It's my favorite kind of wrestling. I'd be happy if I only had to tag team wrestle. So we had kind of played around with the idea, and then we were trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do to try and get this started? Because you need somebody to at least try and somewhere to let us team together. So I was filming, I want to say it was one of the Dark Side of the Rings, just as a background. Ben Ortmans was there, and he was trying to put together a little bit of the Uproar, like his plan for Uproar for that week. And I just mentioned to him, hey, I don't know if you're looking for any more new tag teams, because Travis and I were both on that roster already. And I had just kind of finished something. I had done some stuff with Albert Reed plans, but I didn't currently have any plans going forward. We were going to still be there, but I didn't have anything like set in stone. So I just mentioned it to him, hey, I have an idea for a team. I was thinking like Travis and I as a tag team, because it's a fun little, it's a huge height difference. It's a giant gap. And kind of the idea of like the offense is I use him as a weapon. Just throw him at people, use him as a weapon. And he liked the idea. So we, at Crossbody, we got to debut. And I want to say we started doing a storyline. I think that Uproar pretty much right away started to put the seeds into being a tag team. And then not long after that, we got to actually debut as a tag team.
And how did you find the chemistry was going once you guys actually got into matches? Did you guys kind of gel right away? Did you have some difficulties? Do you continue to evolve the tag team with, I don't know, say finishers and things like that?
Yeah, I think because we get along really well, like we're friends, people would definitely point it out in the in the Crossbody locker room. Like him and I would make a joke and we're laughing at it together, and other people are like, that joke's not funny, man. It's just stupid. And we're killing ourselves over this joke. So we had some just pretty good like chemistry from being friends, and we had done some stuff like in the ring together. And then I think so we started training intentionally to like work on it. And I want to say our timing was generally pretty decent at the start. And it's just like figuring out a little bit of nuances to it. But yeah, and then we've slowly been adding tag team. We've slowly added some tag team moves, and we've just kind of been playing around with our finish. Like we're still playing around with that a little bit. We haven't really settled too much on it, but we've used, I want to say 3 or 4 things already as a finish.
So you've had some matches now that are tag team with the Commotion. You've done some singles matches. I love to ask the question, is there a particular match or surreal moment that you've had where you just kind of have to stop and think like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm facing this person. I can't believe I'm in the locker room with this person. Like, was there any moments that you just had to stop and like reflect on, wow, I'm a wrestler now?
I think I got 2 that aren't really as match related. The first one was relatively early on. It was for Crossbody. I hadn't even had a match yet. I was reffing for Crossbody because I did end up doing a little bit of reffing right before I started to wrestle, but only like a couple months. And it was to build to me and Holden Albright at Crossbody. And it was, he attacked somebody, I ran out as a referee, ripped the ref shirt off, shoved him out of the way, and the crowd exploded. For a small venue, it was really loud. It was really cool that like we got a chant. Like I think it was a holy shit chant right away. And I was like, this is awesome. This is super cool to actually have an actual room just seeming immediately to give a shit. And then at PWO at Disgraceland, right after we won the trios belts, which was in my first match at PWO, we won it when Shiloh blindsided Kyle's team and joined Disgraceland, and the entire crowd just hated us. Everybody's booing at us, swearing at us, flipping us off. It was so cool. That there was never it's so cool I'm in a locker room with this person that I didn't have. I think that maybe a thing just because that like first day of in wrestling was with Josh Alexander right away. That wasn't cool.
You're starting that bar pretty high.
Yeah. At the last Barry show, I got to actually main event. We were in the main event Survivor Series, and I was the sole survivor, which was really cool to be the person that they put as the one man to win the match. And that was really cool. I believe it was my first time main eventing for Barry.
Oh, that's awesome. So I have to do the cliche thing and ask, as would be, I guess, interview wrestling 101, and ask you, what's the dream match that you have on your bucket list? It doesn't have to be realistic. You don't have to justify how it happens. The only criteria that I ask is that it's somebody that's still lacing up their boots so that we don't open the door to all of wrestling history.
I would say I have 3 dream matches. One of them, I believe, is like is realistic. It's a possibility. The other 2 less so, but still in theory could happen. The first one's with Josh Alexander. I want to wrestle Josh Alexander. Like, that is the shining star number 1. I want to have a match with him. Need to have a match with him. The other 2 are then Jeff Hardy and Minoru Suzuki.
Oh, wow. Let's just get a fatal 4-way and get all of you guys in at the same time. Is there any like companies or places that you still want to hit? Like whether it's for wrestling or not, a city you want to travel to, even if it's just to check out a show, or a company that you want to lace up for?
I would definitely love to start expanding outside of Ontario. I haven't had any matches outside of Ontario. I've done 3 trips outside of Ontario, but I didn't end up wrestling at any of them. The first one was before I was greenlit at all, so it was more of just go out, kind of meet people. I got to debut recently for C4 in their pre-show. I would like to be back and get on their main card, and I would really like to get onto a Northern Crown show as well, and then also make my way out west. You've got Stampede Wrestling out west. Winnipeg Pro would be really huge because they've got giant crowds. The product looks fantastic. Make my way out there, and then even just get to like BC and get to travel Canada by wrestling. And then it would be a goal at some point also getting into the States a bit, and maybe even traveling to the UK to wrestle into Europe.
So let's step out of the ring for a minute. You obviously have to have dedicated a lot of time to wrestling, but that can't be the entirety of your day. When you get a little time off, whether it's by choice or, hey, maybe you're injured and nursing a wound and you have to take some time off, what kind of things do you like to do to pass the time? What kind of hobbies do you have or interests?
Definitely, I enjoy video games a lot more sports based, but also into like also Pokemon, as well as Skyrim's probably like the only not even like remotely sporting based video game that I just love. I've been playing it basically since it came out. Play it all the time. But growing up, I've spent a ton of time playing like GM modes in football, basketball, and hockey. Like I used to have notebooks of just like keeping track of which players work best with which players. Tons super in depth into that, as well as getting into like I'm big into playing like Yu-Gi-Oh and a little bit into Magic the Gathering as well.
It's a lot of strategic stuff. So like even something like Pokemon doesn't seem like it, but you got the whole different strengths and weaknesses with GM mode. You're keeping track of numbers. Have you always had like a little bit more of an analytical mind?
Yeah, I love playing with the numbers. Like even now, I'm still do like the GM modes. Like I've usually got like I'll have it on like the PlayStation 4 or the PS3 because I'll still play some of the older games too. I'll have an Excel spreadsheet open on my laptop too, where I'm getting stuff, keeping stuff tracked. Like one of the ones I find the NHL games are a bit more difficult to get into, keeping a long term like run going, just because it takes so long to get through a season. The game still doesn't sim very fast. Same thing with like Madden it's a slower sim engine they've got, so it takes a while. But the old college football games and NBA 2K games, they're super quick. They get through. So I can get through NBA seasons. Like I can get through 5 or 6 in a day because I'm just like building the team and then keep going.
Did you start with like the original Gen 1 Pokemon?
No, my first would have been Gen 3, which in my opinion is the best generation, but obviously there's some nostalgia there. For Christmas, I can't remember quite what year it was. I want to say it would have been the year Emerald was coming out. I got a Game Boy and I got a copy of Sapphire and Emerald for Christmas. And then for my birthday, I got a copy of Ruby and Fire Red. And then later on, I also bought myself a copy of Leaf Green. So I got all 5 Gen 3 games in the span of like a month and a half. I definitely beat all 3 of the Hoenn games. I don't think I ever finished Fire Red or Leaf Green on those original cartridges.
Who is the ultimate starter? And you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I'm old school Gen 1 Charmander 100% of the way. Although, I'm open to hearing any arguments otherwise.
It's tricky because I still play the game, so I got most of the new ones. I had like a gap where I missed like Gens 6 through 8. I didn't really play. I've gone back and with like ROMs and played them, but I just never. It's always so much cooler to get to play them on your own device and get to save it all. I find like it's a tricky question because like it depends on it. Like I think like I have a hard time every time I boot up any of the Hoenn games just picking a starter. They're all great. I think they're all great. I know it's definitely a super unpopular opinion, but one of my favorites is definitely Chikorita. I love Chikorita. I love how terrible it is. It's useless. It's got a terrible moveset. Its stats are terrible, but I just love Chikorita, Magnium, and Bayleaf. Probably the best starter would be Torchic. I think just takes like a slight edge to the rest of them. But then I would also throw Fuecoco in from the new one. It's fantastic. I had so much fun playing with it.
You didn't change my mind. To me, it's still Charmander. But hey, all respectable answers. So the last question that I like to ask before we close out, sometimes maybe a little bit challenging, but maybe a little bit more introspective. If you could go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, or even perhaps somebody else starting out on their journey to get into wrestling, what piece of advice would you give yourself or that other person?
One piece of advice I definitely give to other people, go set up rings. Like, go do it. And when you go, don't just kind of like half-ass it. Go bust your ass. Because it's definitely given me great opportunities to get into these promotions. Like, I got into Barrie Wrestling PWO, especially just because I was there at all their shows busting their ass. I've been running Barry's ring crew for a while now. And for a while I was running Destiny's ring crew as well. So I was being able to get some money from that, but it was also helping me. I find it helps you get booked. People know who you are. They see who's working hard at these shows, and those, like, the people who are already booked are going to put in a good word for you elsewhere. Maybe they don't know specifically where, but they might ask somebody or something. And then for myself as younger, honestly, I wish I started earlier. But then my training would be completely different. Like, everywhere that I trained was not open until I started training there. So, like, I wish I had the opportunity to train earlier and maybe been greenlit a little bit earlier. However, just got to take things as they are, move forward.
Well, everybody's journey is their own, and how you got there is entirely based on how you got there, right?
Right.
Grizzly, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Before we sign out, can you just let people know where they can find you online if they want to drop you a follow, if they want to keep up to date with what you got going on?
Yeah. So on social media, you can find me at Grizzly Mack with 2 Ks on basically every platform. Not promising that I post very much on most of them. You will see me on Instagram and Twitter the most. I'm trying to get going on Blue Sky. Just got it downloaded yesterday. I have a TikTok. I think I've only ever posted once on it. I should really get on top of posting more on that. But all of my social medias are the same username so that it's nice and simple for everybody. If you guys want to come check me out, right now I got Barrie Wrestling. Just come out to Barrie Wrestling. I'm at all the Barrie Wrestling shows. I've already got dates lined up for all of next year for Barrie Wrestling. Right now, that's what I've got in the thing, and then I'll add more later. But Barrie Wrestling is 100%. Where if you want to see me wrestle, you got to come to Barrie Wrestling.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again. I appreciate you taking the time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was enjoyable to come on.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.